Peace and welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Folks, we got a great show for you. First and foremost, let's talk about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We check in with domestic violence survivor and advocate Dee Griffin to give us her take on her story of how she was able to survive the cycle of violence. We'll have that conversation. Also, we check in with Brother Michael Inhotep of the African History Network to give us his insight about a latest poll about Black voters and the mood they have around the midterms and how age is actually a determining factor of whether the Democrats move forward or go back in this election. We'll have that conversation and a whole lot more. Plus, later, we're talking about support for military families. I'm going to discuss with one gentleman, Teron Sims, on how military families can be supported during this time of inflation and political uncertainty. So stay with us. All of that and a whole lot more is coming at you on The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you for tuning in this afternoon. We're looking forward to having some great conversations with you. Big shout out to all of those who are tuned in on our streaming platforms of YouTube, Facebook, and Black Star Network. We hope that you are going to be joining us and be a part of the discussions today. As always, my online culture crew, I see you. And I'm going to say welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, folks, I want to jump right in because time is of the essence. So let's first talk about the great month that this is, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Now, folks, if you did not know, this has been a month that was designated, October has been a month that was designated back in 1987 to talk about the importance, to raise awareness about the about this level of violence that we see in homes after homes that have destroyed marriages and families all across this country. And there are millions of women, unfortunately, who become victim of domestic violence, and there are even some men that become the victims of domestic violence. But today we wanted to do our part to talk to one survivor about how she is able to break through the cycle of violence. We're so happy that she is joining us. She's an anchor woman, but she's also a domestic violence survivor and advocate, Miss Dee Griffin. Dee, thank you so much for checking in this afternoon. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me and acknowledging this problem that goes beyond a month, but at least we do have 1 month to really shine a spotlight on it.
We absolutely do. And of course, as I've learned so much about domestic violence in terms of the roots of it, Dee, when we talk about, some of the conditions that create a culture and an environment where this is allowed to happen, when we look at what's going on in our community, the Black community, right, where domestic violence seems to always be a thing. And unfortunately, we haven't was able to get a full handle on it. What's your take on this? Being a domestic violence survivor, being an advocate, what do you see? Are we making some strides? Are we making any progress on trying to get trying to deal with this problem?
We're making strides in the fact that the awareness is out there. I work in television news, and hearing on the scanner nightly domestic violence calls for help. That's progress, because there was a time for many decades that victims did not feel like anyone would want to hear from them or believe them, so they would not call for help and they would just suffer in silence. So we are making strides in that regard where people are reporting it now, but we still have a ways to go to get into the mentality and get into people's minds and help them understand you don't have to take this. It's okay to press charges. It's okay to stay away from your abuser, because we're seeing now a lot of advocates say that the victim will come to court or they will not come to court in order to protect the person who is the abuser. So there will be all kinds of ramifications that they don't want to face by reporting or charging an abuser or going with the charges against an abuser. So we still have to crack through that and let victims know that it's okay to press charges. It's okay to stop your abuser. You will have a life without the abuser. You will go on. Your children will be okay. We still have a long way to go with that, because just as I was talking to some friends who are in the legal world, you may have one person who comes forward and comes to court, follows the case through, but for that one person, you have 5 others who refuse to answer their phone. They won't talk to law enforcement. They just want the charges dropped. They just at that time, in the moment, they wanted the abuser to stop the abuse, but they don't want to go forward because they love him or her, because women can be abusers as well, or the financial ramifications. I'm not going to get money from this person if I press charges or whatnot. So we still have work to do in breaking those chains.
So let me ask you, let's talk, and I'm glad that you brought up that, because I think all of those reasons, quote unquote, are the barriers that we're constantly, confronted with. So talk to us a little bit about your story, because people see you, Dee Griffin. You're on television. You're reporting the news. You're living a much better, healthier whole life. You have, your family with you, but you do have a story. So share a little bit about that story.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, the whole television thing. I was not the face of domestic violence, because when you think of domestic violence, you think of someone who, has lower social economic level of life or not educated or whatnot. I was raised in a 2-parent household here in Augusta, Georgia. My mom was career woman. My dad was career military, and then he took on another career after retiring from the Army. He was a Buffalo soldier. He was in the last regiment. Buffalo soldier. So he was old school and raised me and my sister in the church. My mom and dad big time Southern, we're going to church, grandma, everybody. We had a whole village. So it wasn't like I saw abuse growing up, because I did not. My dad wasn't abusive to my mom. My mom wasn't abusive to my dad. Now, I mean, daddy was stern, but he wanted to raise his daughters a certain way and
Sure.
to be respectable young ladies. We were debutantes, all of this, went to private schools. I went to college at Fisk University, which is historically Black university in Nashville, Tennessee. Then I went and got my master's degree at Northwestern University. I did get my master's of science in journalism, and I set out to do television news. And I did fall in love in one of my stops, which was Memphis, Tennessee. I had been there almost 8 years, but I fell in love with a guy who was in the church, armor bearer of the church, and seemed like a wonderful person, could recite scripture and everything. And I told him that, many years prior, I had started a journey of abstinence, and he wanted to go on that journey with me. So,
Mm.
I lost out on some really, big time people, NBA players, NFL players, but they're like, nah, if you ain't, doing that, I
But,
don't know.
but this guy, I mean, he wanted to take this journey with you, which
Yeah.
was, I'm sure it was like mind blowing, because you're like, wait a minute, this guy wants to take a journey of absence. He must be serious about me.
Oh, very serious, very educated. He was an educator, or still is an educator. But I thought, this is a special guy, and this is someone God brought for me. This was my godly man. This was my Boaz, So everything was great. He was living in Boston, Massachusetts. He moved there to become a headmaster of a school. And then, we would have our long distance relationship, but it was just, those tearful in the airport crying because we have to separate. We have to, go another 3 weeks without seeing each other. We got engaged, and it was just a fairy tale. I never saw any red flags from him, because he lived away, and also because this was the fairy tale, until the night before the wedding. I was waiting for a special gift that I had commissioned for him, and it did not arrive in time. So I missed the wedding rehearsal and most of the, almost all of the wedding rehearsal dinner, because I was waiting on this package. But he called and yelled at me, just went off on me, because I was not at the rehearsal, because I was waiting for something and he didn't understand it. I talked with my friends, and they agreed that this was just the, pre-wedding jitters. Everybody's feelings were up, were high, because everybody was preparing for the wedding the next day. He convinced me to come on to the rehearsal dinner, and I did. Got there late. All the chicken was gone, but I got there. And everybody thought, they also thought, oh, this is an emotional bride. She's being bridezilla or something. Well, we went on and got married. It was beautiful. And because we were abstinent, he wanted to immediately start working on our family, because he thought, God wants us to be together and God's going to bless us. So me, thinking, okay, I'm married now. I's married now. So sure enough, God heard our prayers, and God was like, boom, I got pregnant immediately. So I was still living in Memphis, and he was really putting on the pressure to move to be with him. And things weren't, jiving very well at the station. So I thought that was God's way of, opening the door, troubling the waters, as my grandmother would say, so that I would move to be with my husband. I needed to be obedient and be with my husband. So we got married in August. I moved to Boston the beginning of November of that year. And I'll just say, by the end of November, I had moved into a Marriott hotel to escape him, because
Wow.
this, first time in my life I had ever been called the N-word by someone who supposedly loved me. We had gotten into our first marital fight, and it got pretty volatile. And something in me said, I had never seen someone like that with me, a man like that with me. And I was afraid. So I packed up and I moved to a hotel. And like most victims, he convinced me to come back after a while. First he blamed me and everything. And I just thought, well, maybe it is my fault. He had been married previously. I had not. So I'm thinking, maybe I just need to settle into this marriage thing. This is a part of marriage. But it should not have been a part of marriage. That should not have been. And also I had this big, beautiful wedding, this big Southern Belle wedding, in to write up in the paper and all of that. So how was I going to leave my husband when we had just had this huge celebration, this huge marriage, a wedding? So I went back to him, and I lived for the highs, but I expected the lows and had to deal with the lows. There were a lot of lows. And I just dealt with it. A lot of it was in silence. I just put up with it until I was 7 months pregnant, and he pushed me. We were in an argument, and he came from across the room and pushed me, and I hit the wall. And whenever we got into fights, I would go hide in the closet, and I would cuddle, like curl up at and hold my stomach and talk to my stomach and talk to my son and say, we're going to be okay. Mommy's going to make sure we're okay. And I would sing to my stomach and just be in the closet. But this night I went to the closet and I called my cousin Pokey back here in Georgia. And Pokey
don't sound like the type of guy.
Nah.
I'm gonna just let y'all know when you got certain names, you don't sound like the type of guy that play around with certain things.
Right. Pokey and his brother FT. We in the South, everybody got a nickname. So, they were the ones who they could beat up on the cousins. They could toss us into buildings and all this stuff, but you're not going to do it. So Pokey was like, we going to come up there. Where are you? And I knew that when Pokey said we, it wasn't a human. It was probably a Glock or something. So I didn't want Pokey to get in trouble and come up there and save me all the way up there when I needed to save myself. So I did go stay with a friend. And of course, again, I went back to him. And also I went back to him, be a little silly here. We had tickets to the Janet Jackson concert. And I wanted to go to the Janet Jackson concert. So, but he had given the tickets away. By the time I realized this, I was like, ugh. So then things seemed to get better. We were anticipating the birth of our son, and something else happened, but it happened right when I was coming home from my baby shower. I was 8 months pregnant. And so my mom and sister, they could tell things were not right. And my dad, I went to talk to my dad, and then he was sort of flabbergasted because he didn't understand how this could happen when he, made sure in his mind that this guy was a good guy. The guy called to ask for my hand in marriage, asked my mom, all this stuff. And my dad just could not understand how the enemy could infiltrate the camps and pull the wool over his eyes. Daddy could not get that in his mind. And so then we had the shower, and I went back to Atlanta to catch the plane. And my mom and sister took me to the airport, and we walked in and we got to the TSA line, and I was saying goodbye, and I walked away, and I looked back at them, and I came back and I said, if anything happens to me, do whatever you can to get this baby. Whatever you can, fight for this little boy. You fight for him with all you have. And in my room at my mom's house, I had left a piece of paper with attorneys I knew back in Memphis who could help, their information. I left passwords for all of my accounts and credit cards and things, my home, all this stuff. I left everything so that they could get it if something did happen, because I thought when I get back, I could die. I had that feeling that I could die. So my concern was just making sure that I got to deliver my baby. That was me. Due date, D-Day was delivery in May. Just get this baby out of your stomach, and whatever happens to you just happens. But I wanted my mom and sister to fight for my baby. And I went back and things were good. And then my baby was born in May. And everything seemed fine, but my mom did notice some contention there. She noticed some things were not right, and we talked about it. But of course, I swept everything under the rug. And to back up for a little bit of history here, or a basis, when you're from the South, you've got to clean your house before your mother comes. So I was doing everything I could before my mom came. I was on my knees scrubbing and picking up and cleaning, and he couldn't understand why I was doing all of this. So I was like, well, my mother's coming. She can't come to a dirty house. He says, it looks fine. I'm like, no, I've got to get it a certain way for my mom to be here. And so when his mom came, after my mom left to go back to Georgia, his mom came, and he started picking up. One morning, he was picking up lint off the couch, and he was looking around like, what else do I do? And I just giggled. I said, oh, look at you. You didn't do this when my mom came. Next thing you know, my lapel of my robe was jacked up, and he pulled me to him and he said, I hate you. And the look in his eyes, it was just pure evil. And we were face to face. And he then started throwing me around. He started saying all kinds of hateful things. I couldn't understand what was going on. And I kept asking him, why? What did I do? And he did pull me close and he said, I just want a kiss. And I was like, okay, give him a kiss. And then next thing you know, boom, another, just all over the place. And I could not understand it. The baby was over by the TV. He was in a swing, and I kept trying to keep my eyes over on him, but I was being tossed about. And over at the sink, he put my head down from the back into the sink. And so I was bent over backwards. And I'm just looking up and I'm looking under the, and I'm bewildered. I'm like, what is going on here? And so then he did get me to one point over by the refrigerator, in front of the refrigerator. And he started talking about how much he hated me. Where was the money? I had all this money before we were married. Where's the money? Blah, blah, blah. And I kept screaming for help and no one would do anything. And then I remember seeing an Oprah show where a woman had been kidnapped in Atlanta, and she recounted to 911 everything she passed, like little markers to tell 911 where she was. So I started saying things like, why are you holding me against my will? Because he wouldn't let me go. Then he punched me, and I had an emergency C-section 5 weeks prior. So that really hurt. And so I'm like, why did you punch me? Why are you doing this? So I started screaming out things. And he would say, shut the F up, shut up. And I would not shut up. So he went for my neck to try to shut me up. And the more I would not shut up, he would squeeze tighter, and I would go up on my toes. And I started looking at my son in his swing. I looked at the TV. I said, okay, Wayne Brady's on. Let's make a deal. So this has been going on for at least 20 minutes. And I don't know why I kept trying to keep track of time. I don't understand why I was doing that, but I remember doing it. And I wanted to see my son. So I wanted to see more of him to make sure he was okay. And the more he would squeeze, the more I would go up on my toes. Then he noticed that I wasn't paying attention to him, and he started spitting at me.
Oh,
Then
no.
something told me to just duck, like we're talking right now, just like duck. And I went down, and that's where his fist went. And we had a stainless steel refrigerator, and it left two knuckle imprints because he did it twice. And so I finally, he pulled me forward, and we were like in the middle of the kitchen standing there, and he wouldn't let me go. And he just was holding me. And again, I heard this voice say, bite him. So I'm not a fighter. So I'm just like, what? And it said, bite him. So I clamped down with my teeth. And I remember my teeth hurting because I sunk in so hard. And then he jumped and let me go. And I ran to get my phone. And I got my phone, and I hit my sister's number, and I was like, help, help. And I put the phone in my pocket, and she couldn't hear anything. And I sort of heard her screaming, Dee Dee, Dee Dee. And so then the police came, and he told me, don't you say nothing. Don't you do nothing. This is fine. This is just an argument. And so I'm just shaking. And they came, and I bolted to the door. And in the police report, it does talk about how I was erratic or something like that. Yeah, this man just tried to kill me. Of course, I'm going to be erratic. So I'm in the hall trying to calm down and talk to them, and they're trying to calm me down. They go in and talk to him, and it was just that was bad right there, because I wanted to get to my baby, and I wasn't allowed to get to my baby because I would have to go near him. So they were trying to keep us apart, but he was allowed to get my baby. And he picked up my baby, and he looked back where I was and kissed him. And, that just sent me they had to pull me into a room because I was not having it. So he was arrested, and a friend of his kept calling me and asking me to help him out. And who did? I did. I sent $1,000 to get him out. I think it was $1,000 to bail him out. But another friend had come over to stay with me that night, and I never told my friend what I was doing, but I was in the other room sending money to get him out of jail, sending money to his friend, transferring that money to get him out of jail. Then the next morning, my sister and my mom arrived. They flew in, and we, they got in the car, and my sister said, I give you 4 hours. For what? What are we doing? What, y'all are here. She said, we getting out. I give you 4 hours to pack, and we're going to get out of here. And so two sorority sisters helped me pack, and we packed up the baby. I had a dog, and we got on the roads, down I-95 to Georgia. And it was hard. We stopped in Virginia, and I remember that that next day was Father's Day. And when we got on the road again, Daddy called and he said, "Thank you for the Father's Day cards and this and that." And so he called to talk to my sister, and my sister said, "Oh, Dee Dee's right here." And he's like, "She is." So I fall into tears, "Daddy," but we had to wait to get below Virginia, because otherwise he was going to come kill him. He was going to go, World War II on him, 3 on him. So
your father would have gone.
Oh yeah. He was an old man, but he wasn't playing, just like my cousins and them. And so then I did get home, but the nightmare did not end, because I'm going to fast forward here due to the interest of time. But I wanted my ex-husband back. I was still a newlywed technically, so I did, try to get him back. I went back to, under the guise of, packing my stuff, and tried to beg for him to work on the marriage, and he wouldn't go for it. Turns out he was seeing someone else. He had another girl. He had a girlfriend back in Tennessee. And so she was taking his attention. And I later learned that was a blessing. Don't think that, these side chicks necessarily are a bad thing, because they take the attention of somebody who's going to kill you or threaten to kill you. He didn't come kill me because he had somebody else to pay attention to. So
wow.
Thank you. So, I wanted my marriage. That I still look back at the text messages. I was begging and pleading constantly. We went back to court for the assault charge. He did get, I think, 26 weeks of batterer's intervention or something. I can't remember, but that was it. And then his record was erased. But during that time, also, the superintendent of schools, she wrote a good letter for him for the judge. And it made him seem like a great guy, because on the outside, most abusers seem like really good people. So
right.
You really, you don't know that they have this tendency, because you're not living with them. They're presenting one thing to you and another thing to, the people on the outside, especially their employers. So she wrote a really glowing review of him for the judge. And so he didn't get a stiffer sentence, of course. And then we went on, and I still fought for the marriage. He blamed me for him having to go to the classes. Then it came time for us to move forward, and he ended up filing for divorce, because I didn't have money at this time. I had moved back and was raising my baby. He wasn't sending any payments regularly, so all of my money was going toward my child and trying to get used to this new normal, and making everything, a home again for me and my son. So during the divorce, he terminated his rights. He told his attorney he didn't want anything to do with this child, the child that he wanted. He's the one who said he wanted to go ahead and start working on, having a family. So I told my attorney, we were talking, and she said, the thing here is, now, if something happens to you and you die, he's going to get this child. If you have a heart attack, or something, you're in a car wreck. And she had just had a client who was in a car wreck, and the father had never been in the child's life, and the kid was maybe 6 or 7, and he came the night of the funeral and got the kid and left, and he had that right.
Wow.
So I said, what can I do? And we talked about termination of rights, and she said, are you sure? Is this something you would go along with? And I said, well, we'll see. And we had a guardian at Lightem who met with us, who was supposed to meet with us. We had to pay him, and he would, be a mediator. My ex-husband never showed up to be with my son, or, say he wanted to see my son.
Does your son have a relationship with his father?
No, he terminated his rights. He willingly signed up. And in the papers, in the termination, it says that he is deemed a threat to my son, to this boy. And so the judge signed off on it, because he showed no interest in the child. It was a deemed abandonment. And so he has still, in 11, my son's 11, so 10 years, he has never reached out. I've never changed my phone number, social media, anything, because I thought, well, maybe he regrets now. No. And turns out he the woman he was seeing, she was pregnant with twin boys. So this was one less mouth to feed. So he terminated rights to my son. Also, in domestic violence, it doesn't have to be physical. It could be mental, emotional, financial. He hit me
Right.
financially, mentally, and emotionally because he could no longer get to me physically. So the financial piece is the rest of this child's life. She's going to have to support this child on her own, which is tough. Any single parent would know it's hard and trying to make ends meet with the child. And then the mental, emotional, my son has been taunted for not having a dad. Thank God my son is a pretty tough kid. He's used to this. But those are things that, he has imparted on this kid who it's not his fault at all. This precious
Sure.
boy is not his fault. It's the fault of a selfish person who's an abuser who did not get his way. He didn't get to kill me. He didn't get to keep me down. So it's like I'm gonna get her in these ways. But thank God I have a strong support system.
So first and foremost, bravo.
Thank you.
I'm really.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, and I thank God that you're here to share your story.
Thank you. I thank God as well.
I'm serious.
I thought I was gonna die.
I'm serious. I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. And I thank God that you and your son is safe, which is, another concern.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've had that conversation with your son. I don't know how to have a conversation with your son about who your father is.
It started off with when he was little, 2 years old, 3 years old, going to daycare, whatever, your daddy's in heaven, and then my father died. And it was like, how can granddaddy be in heaven and my daddy, And so he's had to come to grips with the fact that some families just don't have two parents. Some families do. But also, because a kid has two parents doesn't mean that everything's perfect at home. It doesn't mean that there's no violence. That doesn't mean that it's unicorns and rainbows. But mommy chose to get you away and to make sure that you were safe. And that meant being away from that person who hurt mommy. And if he did it in front of you at 5 weeks old, he was going to hurt me in front of you when you were 5 years old and maybe 10 years old, and so on and so forth. So I wanted to protect my son as well once the reality hit, because I wanted my marriage to work, not because necessarily I wanted to be abused. It was the embarrassment that I suffered for so long. Like, how can I be away from my husband? We just got married, and how does this look that I'm divorced and this and that? I had to get over that and realize that this was a blessing, because this man could have hurt me even worse or killed me, or my son could have grown up thinking that this is how you treat women. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to continue that cycle and make him think that this is how I'm supposed to treat a woman. I never wanted that. And then also there would have been a likelihood that I probably would have had another child, and who knows, that could have been a daughter, and she would have had to grow up in that environment. And I just didn't want that. I did not want that. It's been a struggle. It has been a struggle getting jobs, all of this. And financially, I've never been able to get to the financial spot that I was prior to marrying him. I had a house, I had all this. It's been a struggle, and I'm very honest about it. I'm real with it. But at the same time, I'm alive. My son is alive. He doesn't have to see that abuse daily. So that's a blessing.
So we got a few moments left, Dee. And, and like I said offline, you are always welcome to come back onto this show. And I'm very serious about that, because I feel like you have so much substance and you have so much that you can share with our audience about a number of things, right? But this story, I mean, just allowing you the space to share this story with so many of us who are listening. And, we have a couple of our online culture crew members that said they had to walk away because it was a little triggering for them, for some of them. So I put in the chat, please walk away. I understand. But as one of our pastor crew members, Damon, said, he hates to hear these stories, but we got to talk about it, right? Like we hate to hear this, but we got to talk about it. Yeah. So, I mean, with a few moments left, what would you say is the big thing You know, when you talked about your support, you
Mhm.
have a strong family, and you got Pookie.
Pokey, yes, I got Pokey,
Pookie,
I got FD, I
you got
got
all of them, right? That was going to handle the situation, and you know that could in the
I got
situation,
DJ, my cousin
right?
DJ even put it on Facebook. Let him cross Georgia lines. Bring
Right,
it.
right, like
DJ was
now
like, bring it. Uh-huh.
we know that situations like this could go left, right?
Yeah,
For so
yeah.
many people, not just for your abuser, not just for you, but for
Mm-hmm.
your family too, because your family's going to necessarily. I mean, Pokey going to be like, "Yo, I'm willing to take an L for you."
Yes, Pokey like pop, 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 pop. Come on, bring but
Right,
I'm the cousin with the pearls, and I don't know how to fight for myself. I didn't even know the signs of abuse. I just thought that this was how marriage is supposed to go. Although my parents, I thought, oh, they're old. They just didn't have these kind of young people married issues. But yeah, I'm grateful for my support system. Like I said, my cousin DJ, he was like, don't you bring that over here. We got
right,
her.
right,
Don't you
right.
touch her. And I love my Memphis family, all the people of Memphis who've been so supportive for years. And they're the same way. I can't name everybody, but the Memphis crew, everybody's been very supportive. But it's hard to get out. And I read one of the comments, Karen Connor, she mentors domestic violence survivors. It's crucial to leave after the first occurrence. And that is so true. It used to be that the number was the victims, they don't finally leave, take that final step until the seventh incident, after the seventh time trying to leave. Now the
Right.
numbers have gone up. It's like after leaving 8 times. That's coming back and forth. For me, it was about 4 times coming back and forth. And
Wow.
so, if that had not happened and I called my sister, I probably would have been on that roller coaster for longer. But if you know my sister, Dawn Griffin, Dr. Dawn Griffin, she's not going to let you mess with her little sister. So she's like, oh, we coming, and let him mess with me. But also, it's important to have an escape plan. And I say this, for me, I was talking to my aunt recently and I said, remember my escape plan? And she said, make me remember, baby D. I said, remember, I talked with you and my aunt and uncle had a home on Martha's Vineyard. Our plan was for me and the baby to get to Martha's Vineyard, to get to the ferry and get over, and we will contact police and prevent him from coming over, because there was no other way for him to come except fly in. But police would know and I would be safe, and then they could get me from there. But it's scary, but I had an escape plan. And looking back on it, it's wild to me that I was in this headspace, but I had to be. You have to
Right.
have an escape
You're
plan.
right.
You can't just one day say, I'm out, I'm bouncing. But you have to have an escape plan that's tucking away money,
A lot of
that's
people.
finding a place to go. I wish airlines or Amtrak or some kind of buses or somebody would have a system where if there are bona fide domestic violence victims, there are free tickets that can be given to these tickets via shelters that have proven that they are abused, and get them out of there, because they
That's an
keep,
excellent,
yeah, you
excellent
keep
idea.
coming back. If you're sitting in the same city and you're like, I have no money, I can't, this, you're going to go back to the abuser. You're going to go back because you need help. Or, for me, it was the situation of, I could have been charged with kidnapping for taking my son, but because I had the police report, because the police were called to the scene, I had that as, my trump card, because I wouldn't have been charged with kidnapping since there was abuse and my son was 5 weeks old. He needed his mom.
Yeah.
So that was a saving grace there, that, I
I
didn't
think
get charged with kidnapping.
I think the way you handle this situation, the thinking, and it's unfortunate it happened to you, but the blessing that could come out of this, if there is a silver lining, is that your story and the way you handle it, having an escape plan, making sure that you keep your family involved,
Mhm.
not giving up,
No, and not being
keeping
embarrassed. Don't be
right,
embarrassed.
and most importantly, always looking out for the safety of the children
Yes.
that's in the space. So these are things that are very, very important. I know we got like 30 seconds left. D, I mean, this is such a pivotal time for a lot of people, and I know that one of the big things that can contribute to a contentious household, money,
Hmm.
trust issues, lack of communication, I mean, we're seeing these type of things now because of inflation, because of the pandemic, because of the fact that, we're just in these type of cultures. What would you say to any man or woman who is listening today? To what kind of words of hope could you offer?
You don't deserve to be mistreated. God did not put you on this earth to be mistreated, to be undervalued. You can get out. There's help. The embarrassment holds so many people in these bad, toxic relationships and situations. You don't have to put up with anything but value, good value, someone who sees your worth, someone who loves you genuinely. Love doesn't hurt. You've heard it before. It's true. Love does not hurt. It does not hurt physically, does not hurt mentally, financially. It does not hurt emotionally. And the true character of a person, and again, abusers can be male or female, but a true character of a person is how well they take care of you and your mental stability and your peace of mind. And you have to take care of that yourself. You have to build that, but make sure that they're not coming to tear that down. And if you're listening out there and you're a deadbeat parent, the true measure of you and who you are, a man or woman, is how well you take care of your child. You cannot say that you are above board and you're educated and you're the wonderful person if you're not taking care of all of your children. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, but all of your children.
There it is. D. Griffin, thank you.
Thank you. And I do a monthly blog about domestic violence. It's called Domestic Violence Hidden Crime on WJBF.com. So check that out if you have any friends who may be in a situation. There are a lot of resources there to help and advice or whatnot. Tell my buddy Roland, what's up? I've known him.
I definitely will. D. Griffin, thank you so much for checking in. Domestic violence survivor and advocate, and she's also an anchor woman. D, thank you for being so good for the culture, sis. We truly appreciate it. We look forward to having you back on again.
I'll be back. I wanted to stay, but I've got to go anchor the 4 o'clock news on WJBF.
I got you.
So
I got you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I'll be back. You're going to see me more.
I hope so. Thank you so much, sis. We appreciate you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. All right, folks. Man. Woo. Powerful, powerful testimony there. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to shift gears talking about domestic violence to talking about politics. We're going to be checking in with one of our contributors, Brother Michael Imhotep, to give us some of his insight and analysis about the mood that Black voters have as we're about to approach the polls. Down in Georgia, they've already started early voting. That's what Dee shared with us. And so what is the mood? And why does age make maybe the determining factor of how far the Democrats may go in this year's midterm? So we'll have that conversation. Stay with us. It's The Culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. All right, it's time to check in with one of our contributors here, Brother Michael Imhotep, who is a historian. He is a scholar, professor, and he's the host of the African History Network. And you can check out him on the AfricanHistoryNetwork.com to get all the latest news and information that he's putting out. It's really, really, really good for the culture, talking a lot about our history, to talk about how our history in the past relates to where we are in the moment. So we're always happy to have him on to bring us the insight and the analysis that we need to understand what's going on. And so, Brother Michael, again, thank you so much for joining us today. How you doing, dear brother? Wait a minute, we got you on mute, brother.
I'm all right. How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. Peace. Good to have you, brother. Good to have you. All right, Brother Michael, let's talk a little bit about something around Black voters' mood and this year's midterm. We're seeing something very different. I mean, of course, we have been talking about the midterm elections. Our sister Dee Griffin shared with us offline. The early voting has already started in Georgia, folks. And if you're down in Georgia, she said the lines, Brother Michael, round the corner.
Yes.
So if you're down in Georgia, y'all need to vote.
Absolutely.
That's all it is. Y'all need to vote, because two big races are that the whole country, not just the state of Georgia, the whole country is looking at. Gubernatorial race with our sister gubernatorial candidate and advocate Stacey Abrams. She's going against the current governor, Brian Kemp. This is the second time that they've gone against each other. He only won by a slight margin the first time. And then also we're looking at in the Senate race, Herschel Walker for the Republican side.
Right.
And Raphael Warnock. So two big races. Now, outside of the midterm situation, this is what it was reported as we're talking about what is the current mood right now. And of course, the mood is being determined and tempered by age, economy, and racism, according to a new survey by the GRIO and KFF survey. They found that a number of determining factors might be the one factor that brings either success to the Democrats and to Black folks, or they may not bring success. But here's what they said in this report. And Keena, let's go to this first quote. It says, even though Black voters have a clear preference for the Democratic Party, relatively few, 22% said that Democrats represent their interests very well. Age is a key determinant in Black voters' outlooks and perceptions going into the midterm elections. Voters ages 18 through 49 and over 50 had different views on how they felt about President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris's performance in the office, and if they should serve again. 69% of Black voters overall approve of how Joe Biden handled his job as president, but there's a 23% point gap, 59% versus 82%, and how 18 to 49-year-olds and those over 50 feel about Biden. All right, I wanted to kind of key in on this and take a look at it, because this looks at a number of different factors that could be the big shift for Black voters in this year's midterms. But I wanted to look at this age piece, Brother Michael, because this seemed very fascinating to me. What do you make of this? That 18 to 49 are not sold on President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris right now?
Well, number one, I would ask where they're getting the information from about politics and what has been accomplished by this administration. Number two, when you are older, you have a longer yardstick to measure people against. For instance, my parents were born when Franklin Roosevelt was president during World War II. My parents have lived through Roosevelt. They lived through Nixon. They've lived through Kennedy. They lived through Eisenhower, Harry Truman, Bill Clinton, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, President Barack Obama, Bush the son, Bush Jr., George W. Bush, etc. Right? When you go in August 28th, 1963, you had the March on Washington, the March for Jobs and Freedom. In June of 1963, there was a march up and down Woodward Avenue here in Detroit that Dr. King led. My mom was in that march, June 1963. She ain't marched next to Dr. King like a lot of people say they did, but she was in the march, right? So when you go talk to my parents about politics, you need to know what the hell you're talking about, because they've lived through all that. They've seen all that. So when you're 18 to 49 and maybe you haven't read the U.S. Constitution, maybe you don't study politics or follow politics on a regular basis, maybe you don't understand that neither one of these parties or candidates, any of them, are perfect, but you're comparing one party's record and one candidate's record against another. Okay, there's a difference. And then also when you talk to them about how to get things accomplished, like for instance, like a lot of African Americans will say, oh, well, we didn't get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, so you're thinking about not voting. But you're going to let Republicans take back control of the House and the Senate, and they're the ones that blocked the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act? The George Floyd Policing Act passed the House of Representatives March of 2021 by a vote of 220 to 212. All the Republicans voted against the bill. And then it was lying-ass Senator Tim Scott who lied, and he blocked the bill in the Senate. So you're going to let them take back control of the Senate? But then people forget that May 25th, 2020, on the second anniversary of George Floyd's death, President Joe Biden did an executive order dealing with policing. It dealt with it at the federal level because he doesn't have control over the state level. That's based upon the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Okay, so you have to. So what I encourage people to do, number one, Farajii, go to whitehouse.gov and look at the fact sheet. The Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Black Americans and communities across the country. I'll post a link here in the chat, because this is a 22-page document that was last updated June 19th, 2022, that breaks down how the policies of the Biden-Harris administration are helping the African-American community. It was last updated February 28th, 2022. I talk about this when I'm on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and outside of me, I don't know anybody else that talks about this document. It goes category by category, whether you talk about the American Rescue Plan, whether you talk about the infrastructure bill, and then I'm not even sure if this includes the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, but that's something that's very important. But also you look at what just happened with student loan forgiveness, okay? A little more than 25% of African Americans are going to have the remaining balance of their student loan debt wiped out. 500,000 African American families are going to be moved from a negative net worth to a positive net worth because of that one policy. Republicans overwhelmingly are against it, and you have Republicans filing lawsuits or preparing to file lawsuits to block the student loan forgiveness. So you have to understand, it's not only about what someone can do for you or what a candidate or party can do for you, is also understanding how to block what other people are trying to do to you. And you have to, don't compare the Democrats to the almighty, compare them to the alternative, because the alternative are Republicans.
Wait a minute, Brother Michael. Why are you dropping some jewels like this? Don't compare Democrats to the almighty.
Yep. And don't compare them to the alternative. Look at how Republicans have been voting. Go to congress.gov. Congress.gov is number one, where you can read all these bills that are being proposed in the Congress and being passed. Two, if you don't have time to read the entire bill, read a summary of the bill. They have a half-page, one-page summary. Three, most importantly, at congress.gov, it shows you who voted for the bill and who voted against the bill. If you're a member of the House of Representatives keeps voting for bills that you advocate for overwhelmingly, why the hell would you let them get voted out of office? Because most likely the person that's going to replace them is going to be against your interests. If you're two members or one or two members of the U.S. Senate keep voting for bills that you advocate for, why the hell would you let them get voted out of office? Because if Republicans take back control of the Senate, they're going to stop all or most of the federal bench nominations of President Biden. And they're going to probably block any Supreme Court nominations that he makes as well. This is what happened to Merrick Garland back in 2016 and when he was nominated by President Barack Obama. This is what happened to an African-American woman named Myra Selby, who was a judge in Chicago, and she was nominated in 2016 by President Barack Obama to be a federal judge over the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals, okay? And they blocked this African-American female judge. Mitch McConnell was in control of the Senate. They blocked her nomination, did not even give her a hearing. Well, when Trump became president because of by way of the Electoral College, and most of us don't understand how the Electoral College works, created by the U.S. Constitution, which is part of the problem. We don't understand this. Guess who they nominated and put into her seat? Amy Coney Barrett. Amy Coney Barrett was confirmed by the Republican-controlled Senate, which put her on the trajectory to be on the U.S. Senate once Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and they ran through her nomination in 9 days before the election. See, so we have to understand, one, how elections have consequences, two, how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement, and three, where to go to get the information to understand how to make the decisions, okay? And if you don't understand, and your understanding of history is directly related to your understanding of politics, because politics and history intersect. And okay, so we have to understand how all this is connected, but everything that we want to do, and my degree is in business administration with a major in marketing. I'm all for economic empowerment, but your economy that your Black-owned business operates within and relies upon is shaped by policy made by politicians.
But see, and here's my take on that too, Brother Michael, and then we're going to get to some comments from our culture crew. The take that I have is that so many of us put our eggs in the economic basket as if that is the only salvation for Black America. Like the challenges, the issues that we are confronting in this day and time, these aren't necessarily business issues. Not to say that the small Black businesses and even large Black businesses don't have to go through red tape. I'm talking about here's an opportunity where we can go to the fundamental root. We can go to the root of the problem. And then why is this an opportunity? Because people are dissatisfied. Because people are tired of the same old talk from leadership where, and the sentiment of the country is something needs to change. And I'm talking about across the board, Black, white, Asian, Latino, folks are saying something needs to change. And my concern for Black folks is that we want to hold on to this current government, current system of things, because we finally getting a little bit piece of the pie. So we like, no, don't destroy it all right now, because I'm just starting to come up. I'm starting to get mine. I'm starting to get a little slice of this thing. And I'm saying, no, it's not working. I mean, unless we can, and I love, and I'm going back to that statement, I'm not expecting the Democrats to be the almighty. I'm not expecting my candidates to be Jesus. I just want you to go harder on what you know is right. Now, in the meantime, in between time, that don't mean I'm gonna go to the Republicans because I got an issue with the Democrats, because there's more to lose than there is to gain if I make that move. Right. And so that's part of the thing. And you know, last week, or I think it was like last week, there was a poll that came out. We talked about it on the show, that says that one of the big issues that Black voters are facing right now is that, bro, Michael, our ideology, our political ideology, we're not on the same page. We're not on the same page. You got Black folks that are thinking all types of stuff, and we're just not on the same page, brother.
Well, I doubt there's ever been a time in the history of this country post-slavery where all African Americans have been on the same page. But that goes back to understanding history. Okay, because if you understand history and you understand how you got to this point, right, then we would have more consensus. But you know, I mean, we've always had African American conservatives. We've always had African Americans who weren't conservative. Things like this. You had a Dr. W.B. Du Bois. You had a Booker T. Washington. You had a William Monroe Trotter. You know, so there's never necessarily been a time where we've like all been on the same page. That's just revisionist
That's a myth.
Yeah, that's just a myth. Okay. But what we have to understand is the impact that policies have. To understand policies that you need to advocate for, you need to understand history and understand how you got to where you are and what the present conditions are to understand what policies need to take place to address the conditions. Okay. So a lot of, and oftentimes I hear people, it's just like, for instance, people will say, oh, well, the Asians got a hate crime bill. Okay. They call it the Asian hate crime bill. Well, if you go to congress.gov and actually read the bill, number one is called the COVID-19 Hate Crime Act. Number one. Number two, it is not specific to race. If you actually read the bill, and this is a short bill, because what the bill does, it deals with allocating more money for data collection, when it comes to hate crimes. It's not specific to Asian Americans, number one, number two. And then number three, the first hate crimes bill ever passed in the history of this country was signed into law in 1968 by President Lyndon Johnson, and it was part of the Fair Housing Act. And it was because of the civil rights movement, and it largely was for and because of African Americans. Right. That's the 1968 Hate Crimes Act. So they skip over that, and then also they skip over the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill. Last time I checked, Emmett Till was black. They skip over that, and that's the first anti-lynching bill that's been passed, and it took us 122 years to get that bill passed, since 1900, when Representative George Henry White of North Carolina, who was a Republican, and he was the last African-American left in Congress after Mississippi and South Carolina and Alabama and Louisiana rewrote their state constitutions to impose poll taxes and literacy tests, and the African-Americans who were in Congress all got wiped out because they suppressed the African-American vote, just like what they're trying to do now in states that have Republican dominated state legislatures. Yeah, this is what happened after Reconstruction ended. Okay, so it took us 122 years to get the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill. I find it interesting when people say, oh, Asians got a hate crime bill. They don't mention the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill. This goes back to your understanding of politics and laws and policies and what has actually been accomplished in this past 2 years. And very important, you know, so what's happening now is Republicans are focusing on crime, and they're focused on inflation. Okay. Right. And we've seen a tightening in the races, like in Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes versus that dumbass Senator Ron Johnson, and in different races, we see a tightening in the races. Even in Reverend Raphael Warnock is 4 points ahead. He's like 48-44 against Herschel Walker. Right. What Republicans are focusing on crime, and they're trying to scare white people. Okay. And say if these Democrats win these seats, especially like Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin, oh, they're going to be soft on crime and things like this. This goes back to 1988 presidential race. George W. Bush, the father, against Mike Dukakis, who was the governor of Massachusetts. Oh. And they had the Willie Horton ad that ran in 1988. Which I remember that ad. It was a racist ad, right? And Willie Horton was a black man who was serving a life sentence for murder, okay, in Massachusetts, and he got a weekend furlough, and he ends up raping a white woman, killing her husband. He breaks into the house, things like this, right? And they made this a big deal during the campaign, and they were saying that Democrats were weak on crime, and that if Mike Dukakis becomes president, he's going to be weak on crime. He's not going to be able to protect you. And they were appealing to white voters with this. And George W. Bush ends up winning, okay, the presidential election. So Republicans are running the same campaign now, but it's even worse, because now they're saying, oh, Democrats are defund the police. Oh, these black candidates. Last night in the debate between Abrams and Kemp, he tried to say that Abrams was for defund the police as well. And this is being weaponized. Now, this is why I said from the beginning, defund. Don't take this the wrong way, everybody. I said defund the police was dumb as hell. That slogan is, as somebody has a degree in marketing and has worked in marketing and sales for years, that's one of the worst slogans I've ever heard in my life. Okay. and Republicans are weaponizing that now with increases in crime. Okay. You ain't gonna win none of these statewide races talking about no damn defund the police. But we don't understand that. We don't understand that on a statewide level, and most of the voters are white. And you think you're gonna jump out here talking about defund the police? You must want to lose. No, you got to have a holistic approach to policing. Okay, right. This is why Biden was absolutely correct when he said we got to fund the police. But he was also talking about funding other programs as well, whether it's mental health, whether it's job training programs, funding when it comes to clearing backlogs of cases. He was talking about a holistic approach to policing. Okay, so this is the same thing that has to happen here. And then also what's extremely important is because there's a line item in the White House budget, 2023 budget, that's going to allocate about $37 billion to doing just that. It's a holistic approach, and part of it is hiring 100,000 more police officers. Well, you have a shortage of police officers across the country. Right here in Detroit, about 2 months ago, the report came out. We're down about 223 police officers because of COVID, because of them leaving the profession. What the NAACP, National Action Network, Urban League, what all the activists should be talking about is encouraging African Americans to apply for these police departments and get these jobs, the right type. We have the opportunity to apply to these police departments and become the type of officers who we say that we want to see. If you want officers that de-escalate situations as opposed to escalate situations, if you want officers that respect people's humanity and treats them with respect, if you want officers that only use lethal force as a last result after they exhausted other means, where are you going to get them from? We should be applying to those departments and become the type of officers that we say we want to see. More and more police departments are implementing a policy called duty to intervene, which means if you see police brutality going on, you see something going wrong, you have a duty to intervene and stop it. Some of the first people that need to apply for these jobs are the activists, because they can go into the police departments, and when you see stuff that you've been protesting against, guess what? Now you got a badge. Now you can intervene and help stop that, help expose it. Okay, so this is a real opportunity for us to really shift what's taking place, especially in communities where African Americans are the majority of the population. And that is a message that's not being promoted. We should be promoting that. I think I don't hear him. Okay,
there we go. Brother Mike, I got to take a quick pause.
Yeah.
When we come back, we're going to get some comments from our culture crew, our online culture crew, as you've been dropping all this knowledge, and get with their take on it. Nah, brother, you're dropping it. You're making some valid points. So we're going to hear from our culture crew, get some questions, and continue the conversations as we continue to talk about Black moods as we're approaching the midterm elections, folks. We're just a couple of weeks out. States are already in the early voting period. This is a very, very pivotal time. And we need to be very clear about where we stand and what we're voting for. We're going to continue to have that discussion. So stay with us. That's up next here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shootings.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate Black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are black beyond measure.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Folks, if you've been tuned into the conversations, you know that we've been having just phenomenal discussions about various topics that have impacted our communities, our homes, our communities, and this whole country. So that's why we're always asking for your support, because we want to continue to have these conversations going. So make sure you just head right over to blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure you check us out there. Join us, register or subscribe to the network. It's all for free. You can download for free or download the app on all of your devices. But most importantly, we need your financial support. Even if you can't give a lot of money, anything that you can give to help further us in this process and in this movement is greatly, greatly appreciated. Also, you can share the content. Make sure that you find Roland Martin on YouTube and find Roland Martin on Facebook. So that way you can stay posted about the notifications and about all the happenings of Black Star Network. So your support is greatly appreciated. Also, I personally invite you to join me as we can have these conversations. Join me online. You can follow me on my social media platform at The Real Farajii, on Instagram, Farajii, on Twitter, and Farajii Muhammad on Facebook. I would love to connect with you, build with you, and let's continue to build this community that we call the Culture Crew. So Farajii, The Real Farajii on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook as well. Folks, we've been having a conversation with Brother Michael Inhofe. You know him. He's one of the great panelists from RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered, and he's joining us as one of our contributors as well to give his analysis on where we are. What is the mood of Black voters as we go into this year's midterm election? And there are a lot of things at stake. And one of the big factors has been the age. We know that another factor has been the economy. We know that there has been a host of reasons as to why Black people should go out and vote. I want to bring Brother Michael back in as Brother Michael is doing the great work keeping us updated about the history, because he's a historian, but he could talk to us about the history as we look at how both Democrats and Republicans are moving and talking about their platforms and sharing their policies, how we should look at these candidates if they stand before us wanting our vote, and why it's important for us to get involved. And I'm going back to that statement that we need to stop looking at the Democrats as the almighty and see them better than the alternative. And that's where we are, folks. You know, I'm all good for radical and drastic change, but I do know that human nature doesn't allow us to make swift changes in a very smooth way. We don't make those transitions very well. So until we are at that place, until we continue to build what our new political alternative will be, what is our new political future, this is what we're working with right now. And I'm going to tell y'all something, folks. I'm not satisfied with the alternative. I'm not even trying to hear that. I'm not hearing that. I am not hearing that at all. And I know people say, well, black folks, you know, we have the Democrat. What do you really expect? This is not your grandfather's Republican Party. This is Trump's Republican Party. This is a different party that we're talking about here, folks. This is a different group of men and women, predominantly white males, who don't abide by the rules of the Constitution, who don't abide by the rules of logic, who aren't who don't stand tall for truth. This is a different Republican Party. And I know that, you know, Brother Michael, there are a number of black candidates that are running on the Republican ticket. Herschel Walker isn't the only one. Tim Scott isn't the only one. Right. There are actually a number of black candidates that are running on the Republican ticket in this year's midterm election. Mm-hmm. And black people are saying that, you know, we had one of our culture crew members yesterday and say, look, we need to spread out. We do need to infiltrate the party. And I push back on that, bro. I really push back on that because I'm like, what kind of strategy is that? That's not a strategy that I can bet my interest and my values on. That I'm gonna have some black folks going, you're not infiltrating the party. Wait a minute, hold on. You mean to tell me you're gonna go up there with your individual ideas, with your individual values and interests, and you're gonna infiltrate the Republican Party as a black person?
Yeah, no, not this Republican Party. This is Trump's party. This is the party of the election deniers. This is the party of the coup plotter sympathizers, and this is a party that is really, in many ways, advocating for fascism. You have a lot of them. You look at some of these bills passing the state legislatures, like Senate Bill 202 out of Georgia. It will give the state board of electors the ability, if I remember correctly, it's the state board of electors, it'll give them the ability to overturn election results like at the local level. Okay. This is something that's very extreme. Okay. Maybe you could have infiltrated the party. First of all, you're black. They're gonna see your ass coming a mile away, so you ain't infiltrating nothing. Just be honest. Okay? You ain't. When we study the history of slavery, there was a reason why most slaves ran away at nighttime, not in the daytime, so they couldn't be seen. Okay, you not infiltrating anything. They see you coming a mile away, but you would have had a better chance of building a coalition or doing a force or something like that prior to Trump. Here, no, this is gone. What African Americans really should be focused on is taking over the Democratic Party. And if we can't completely take it over, because that's where many of us are, even if you don't necessarily belong, if you're not a member of the Democratic Party, but you vote for Democratic candidates, that's where we are. We should be really focused on building up a huge power base in the Democratic Party if we can't completely take it over. But you got to have a different type of mentality to think about being empowered. Okay. See, if you just keep complaining and they won't let us do this, they won't let us do that, you can't even think on that level to say, you know what? A lot of these old white people are dying out. And the 2020 census, the population of white people dropped below 60% for the first time since 1790. It dropped to 57%. You know, when we look at policies like the Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, we look at policies like student loan forgiveness, we look at these policies that disproportionately benefit African Americans. You know, we should focus on really building up a power base here, because that's where we are already. You got 59 members of the Congressional Black Caucus, which is the largest it's ever been.
Right.
We should be focused on taking this thing over, like the coup plotters and QAnon and the Trump supporters took over the Republican Party. But you gotta have, you gotta have self-esteem, self-development, self-worth to even think on that level that you can take over something like that.
But see, that's what I'm saying, bro. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, if we're trying to we're trying to create a revolution if you want to create a revolution, right? Mm-hmm. The ground is much more fertile, I think, on the Democratic side than it is on the Republican side, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There are already sentiments, and I'm not saying that we completely if you want to uproot the party, that's fine. My point is, though, you have the sentiment of change, the sentiment of revolution, the sentiment of change, of wanting to see things better. The Democrat Party, of course, is not the be all in all. We already know that.
It's a big tent party.
It's the big tent party, right? Mm-hmm. And look, if you speak the language of the people, because I was always taught, as many years I've done activism work, speak the language of the people. What is the language of the people today? Mm-hmm. The people really want justice.
Yeah, right.
The people yearn for truth, right? The people really want equality, right? You speak the language. I don't care if you go to any white man, if you go to any Asian man, the Latino brother, the black man, you speak this language. Mm-hmm. Then guess what? You're going to find yourself an ally. But you got to, and like you said, bro, you got to have the mindset to be able to say, okay, I'm going to come into this space, and I'm gonna get a better assess the lay of the land, and then I'm gonna start plotting seeds, right? And then I'm gonna start, because you're talking about any type of political revolution, but political revolutions come from understanding how politics work. It comes from understanding how these political parties have been in power for so long. We got to do our homework, bro. We really got to do the homework and understanding this. Let me go to a couple of the comments, because folks have checked in, Brother Michael.
Let me just say this very quickly. When I say take over the Democratic Party, I don't mean take over to do people harm.
No, I got you.
That's not what I'm talking about. Because policies that are good for African Americans are good for America in general. Okay, but that allows us to be able to push our agenda, push our issues the farthest, and get the most accomplished. And I'm glad you mentioned this, and I want to get to it. That's the point. Mm-hmm. The point is, what platform is going to take us further along? Right? What's going to give us further along to get our things across? Now, here's the thing: we gotta speed up the time, because we got generations behind us that are expecting us to win. We need to speed up the time. We don't have the time or the liberty to just sit back and just be like, well, we're going to wait on it. Because there are some folks that are in the Democratic Party that say, well, we got to take a time. No, we don't have the time to wait no more. Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't wait on this. And Biden, even the president himself, is constantly being pushed. Don't think because if y'all remember President Biden from 30 years ago, and I've watched, Brother Michael, some tape when he spoke to the NAACP in Baltimore. He was at their convention years ago, and he was talking all this stuff. Basically, things are going to change, but you got to wait. You got to wait. This ain't the same Biden. This dude this president that we see here, he's being pushed constantly.
Right. Well, the circumstances have changed also. That's the point. Because you have a entire political party, the Republican Party, that is like anti-constitution. You got so the times. This is not the same Republican Party from 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. Okay, so yeah, there's a sense of urgency that's taking place right now. There's causing them to realize. Yep, and the information is coming. The information is coming.
I'm sorry, brother. I was just going to say, look how fast Trump or MAGA Republicans are spreading their message.
Mm-hmm.
You got to move with the pace, as Dr. King said. The urgency of now. You got to move
now. Yep.
You got to move like this is it, man. And then check this out. Here's the other part, and I'm definitely going to get to your comments very quickly. But do you know? And I know you know this, Brother Michael, but I'm saying this to our audience. In this poll with the Griot, in the New York Times Siena poll that they just did, they're finding out. Do you know, folks, that more Americans are becoming more accommodating to anti-democratic candidates in this country? That this may be the first midterm election, or the first election, national election, where, guess what? People who have touted anti-democratic beliefs, values, they're not being pushed to the side. They're actually being welcomed and accommodated. We're seeing this.
You're talking about Democrat with a small d, not Democratic.
Not right. I'm talking about this order of things.
Exactly.
There are anti-democrat people that don't necessarily
election deniers. Yes.
Election deniers. They're not. They really don't care about the Constitution.
Right.
They really don't.
They're trying to shred the Constitution. But the other thing is, Republicans, if they get 38, if they get control of 38 state legislatures, they want to have a constitutional convention.
Right. We talked about that. Right.
Okay. Now, this is the cancer of Donald Trump. This is a result of Donald Trump.
Right.
And this is what I was warning. I was warning people in 2015 and 2016 about Trump, and said he had to be stopped. And people thought I was playing games. And I said, no, you understand history. Trump was a combination of Richard Nixon and Governor George Wallace of Alabama. Okay.
Can you throw Pat Buchanan in that mix too?
You could throw Pat Buchanan in there, but especially Governor George Wallace and Nixon, because Trump ran on the platform of law and order, which is a throwback to Nixon.
Right.
But Trump has a love for dictators, and he wanted to present himself as a strong man. Okay. And so now you're dealing with a whole nother thing that, and he thinks he's a king. He thinks he has unlimited power, etc. So it's just like with the classified documents. He thinks the documents belong to him. No, they don't belong to you. They belong to the National Archives. That's based upon the Presidential Records Act of 1978. Those documents belong to the Office of the Presidency, which is an institution, not a person. And then when the president leaves the Office of the Presidency, they go to the National Archives. Okay, so you got somebody whose mind is warped and doesn't understand all of this. And at the same time, he backed by people like Leonard Leo and people like this who are financing these election deniers, financing all of this, which is then going to break democracy. Okay, one man, one vote, and everybody votes count. Everybody's vote counts. You have people who are now trying to choose their voters as opposed to the voters choosing the politicians. That's extremely dangerous. Wow. That's extremely dangerous, and it's definitely not beneficial to African Americans. When you study the policies that these people are pushing, absolutely not.
That is, bro, I'm telling you, you turn on some light bulbs. We're gonna have to call you an electrician in a minute, brother, because you turning on some light bulbs. You said that we're in a place where politicians are choosing voters and voters are not choosing politicians.
In a lot of these states that have passed these voter suppression bills, you've had 19 states passed 34 laws. Yeah. And they're trying to pass more of these. Exactly. They're trying to pass more of these. The other thing that's happened is that Trump and his people, what they've done is they've recruited a lot of poll watchers, Republican poll watchers, who and these are people who are being trained to challenge votes, things like this. And this is creating a whole problem when it comes to getting poll workers, the volunteers, et cetera, because a lot of the veteran poll workers, they have left because oftentimes it's not a safe environment. They've been getting death threats, things like this. And many of them are being replaced by these Republican poll watchers and poll workers, okay, who have an agenda. Okay, so this is like really, really dangerous. That's what's taking place right now. This is even more reason why we have to understand that elections have consequences and how important it is to vote in midterm elections. Democrats have to maintain control of the House, increase their lead, and maintain control of the Senate and increase their lead. Because if you can net 2 Democratic senators, then you can do carve-outs to the filibuster. You can get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. You can get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. You can get other bills like the Moore Act, which did pass the House of Representatives, and only 3 Republicans voted for it. And that dealt with decriminalizing marijuana at the federal level, right, and expunging marijuana convictions going back to 1971. This goes beyond what Biden just did with his pardons for marijuana conviction. Okay, but this has to get passed in the Senate, and currently you need 60 votes in the Senate to do that. You don't have 60 votes in the Senate. It's just like the Crown Act that dealt with prohibiting discrimination against hairstyles, especially African-American hairstyles. That ties to educational opportunities and economic opportunities. That passed the House of Representatives. Only about 14 Republicans voted for the bill, but you need 60 votes in the Senate to get that bill passed. So these are bills that will have a tremendous impact on African Americans and our economic outlook as well. But you got to get it passed in the Senate, it requires a different strategy and it's different rules and a different structure than the House of Representatives is.
Absolutely. All right, let me get to some comments as we kind of bring some ending to this, because we're a couple of weeks out from the midterm elections.
21 days away.
Yes, we're going to continue to have these conversations, and of course we'll bring our brother Michael back. But let me hear from our culture crew. Willie Frazier, my guy, you say if we go both parties, we divide our power. What hurts more, getting slapped with 2 fingers or 5? We must continue to slap America to consciousness. Well, that's a hell of a way of looking at it, but I agree with you.
Yeah, you got to lose the power if you split off into the Republican Party. Yeah. Right.
LJ007, you say vote with intention, pray over the ballot, child, and learn to stand in our God-given authority. It's getting really real out here. People to the point they have built a doomsday underground world. Shaking my head. Yes, they have. Lana, my sister Lana, always a loyal watcher. You say we should be playing both parties. I disagree. Whites play parties and vote their interest. But shall we do as the whites?
Well, what interest does the Republican Party have that's beneficial to African Americans? What interest? Look at all these bills that we advocate for. Go to congress.gov and look up all these bills that you say you want and look how Republicans voted for the bills. Almost all these bills, Republicans voted overwhelmingly against them. You want to decriminalize marijuana? Republicans don't. Only 14 Republicans out of 215 voted for, only 3 out of 215 voted for the Moore Act in the House of Representatives. Okay. One of them, I think, is high half the time, Sugar Daddy Matt Gaetz. Only 3 Republicans voted for the bill. Go look, get past all these slogans and go look at who votes for these bills. What you vote for shows me what you value. This is what we have to understand. This is why congress.gov is such an important website.
That's it. I love it. Real Brooklyn, they say they are being more accommodating because people are fed up. People are angry, and anyone that comes along and show any empathy for them, that's where they will roll. And then let me just tell y'all something. Even in our pain, even in our struggle, we can't get desperate. Because if we get into emotional space, we get into this emotional space, right? Well, we just need something. Then we lose sight. Right. Like, we can't get desperate. We can't get weak. I mean, look, we're resilient people. We've gone through a lot of things in this country, but we can't just drop the ball just because we're tired.
Well, we have to have strategy and determination. And we have to be able to assess these policies. Can you see the link that I just posted here in the chat? It says whitehouse.gov.
Yeah, I see the link. And what I would do, and Ariel, if you can take that link and put that into the YouTube, I don't know if we can put that into the YouTube chat for our people for our culture crew to check out. But Brother Michael has shared with us a link.
Yeah, if you get a chance, just pull it up on the screen. I want people to see the title of it.
Yeah,
they can
we got a few minutes left because I got to bring on my next guest, Brother Michael.
Okay.
But you my guy, so we gonna bring you back on.
Okay.
But I definitely want people to see that. DeAndre, let me pull up a couple of more comments. DeAndre, you say facts. We are not a monolithic people. That statement I just typed is a literal comment. It goes in everything that we do and live by. Absolutely. We're not monolithic.
Right.
Truth is power. You said, did we forget that we raised the Wage Act, Paychecks Fairness Act, and protecting the rights to organize an organization when we have to protest in the streets for police and justice? That's my Democrats.
Yeah, that passed the House. That did not pass the Senate, the Paycheck Fairness Act. Yeah, but it needs to pass the Senate, though, but it did pass the House of Representatives.
So we got so many different things going on, but you know what? Get past all of the emotion, get past the rhetoric, and see for yourself. See for yourself. And when you see for yourself, tell your friends and your family, hey, look at the whitehouse.gov, go to congress.gov. Let's look at this because we're having emotional conversations about real life stuff. Go ahead, Brother Mike. We got the final one.
That link that I posted, can you show that can you click on that, show that on the big screen? I want people to see the title of it. Okay. Because this is the fact sheet that shows how the policies of the Biden-Harris administration have benefited African Americans. See, proper documentation ends all conversation. I don't go back arguing back and forth with people. I deal with facts and evidence, okay? You read this right here. This is the latest one. This was updated June 19, 2022. The Biden-Harris administration advances
make it big, too. Make it big if we can, Ariel.
Yeah, make it big, yeah. The Biden-Harris administration advances equity and opportunity for Black Americans and communities across the country. Go through and read this. Share this with your friends and family. Besides me, I don't know anybody else. I haven't seen anybody on MSNBC, anybody on these other shows talk about this. This goes through and breaks it down category by category. Education, the American Rescue Plan, when it deals with the infrastructure bill, COVID-19, Emmett Till anti-lynching bill, all this stuff. Okay, so when you got people say, what did we get? Well, read this. Okay, this breaks it down. Now compare this. Don't compare this to the almighty. Don't compare this to to perfection. Compare this to the alternative. Because Republicans overwhelmingly were against these policies and are trying to block these policies and stop future policies like this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Brother Michael, we appreciate your time, brother. And again,
this is my website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, because I teach my online classes there also.
Yeah. Talk to us about the online classes. We know that you're still continuing that process.
Yeah, so I teach them on Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Tuesdays, it is from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We really look at history from 1800 to 1968 chronologically to see what happened to us after slavery ended, what led to the Civil War. How did we get, and you scroll down and you see the information for the classes. Scroll down, you see the information for the classes. How do we get to where we are today to understand where we need to go from here? Okay, keep scrolling, and it's right there. You'll see the flyer. And then on Wednesdays, it's ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Kemet is one of the original names for Egypt. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place, and go through and study the transatlantic slave trade. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you still have access to the full class. And we have a bundle pack. The classes on sale $80 each, but we have a bundle pack where you get both classes for $130. So that's right at the homepage of our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. And you can email me through the website as well if you have any questions.
There it is. And Brother Michael, Lana, our watcher, she said she signed up for the class, Doc. So
okay. Thanks. What's her name?
So
What's her name?
Lana Latham.
Okay, all right, Lana. She may be in class.
She said she signed up for the class. She said in the chat with the fire emojis too.
Oh yeah, we deal with, man. We got. I have a binder that I created the curriculum for the class. I've been studying history 30 years. I created the curriculum for both classes, so we get into some deep information.
There we go. Brother Michael and Hotep, it's always a pleasure to have you, man. And, you know,
thanks.
again, we'll bring
Thanks
you back on next week, bro. Let's bring you back on next week to chop it up, all right?
All right, thanks. No problem, Farajii. Take care.
Thank you, brother. And folks, make sure y'all check out Brother Michael at his website. Again, it's AfricanHeritageNetwork.com.
The African History Network.com.
The African History Network.com. Thank you, Brother Michael. The African History Network.com. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about the great work of supporting veterans in our country. We'll be checking in with veteran advisor, Mr. Teron Sims, to talk to us about one issue that needs your support. Stay with us. That conversation is coming up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure.
All right, folks, for our final conversation here on The Culture today, we wanted to talk about the struggles of veterans coming back home and finding employment and finding homes. And this has been an ongoing issue across the country, folks, because we're seeing that according to the latest, some of the big data, around 20% of Americans work in a field requiring an occupational license. And that number jumps to 33% for military spouses. Now, the case is that occupational licenses are not valid from one state to another, and that means that spouses have put in countless hours, days, weeks, and months to get their unique certification, have to start from scratch, even though they have made the ultimate sacrifice by serving in our nation's military. So today we wanted to just have a conversation with Teron Sims, who serves as a military and veterans advisor at Merit, to talk to us a little bit about this issue of how we can get veterans accommodated back to civilian life and how we can do it from state to state. Let's bring Teron into the discussion. Teron, thank you so much, sir, for being with us this afternoon. How are you, brother?
Well, brother, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Good to hear. Brother Teron, let's talk a little bit about this, because this might seem outside of the normal discussion that we have, especially within the Black community, about the struggles of veterans. We know about, you know, the veteran black men and women serving in the military, but life after the military can be very, very hard. What aren't we talking about enough of when it comes to veteran life and those trying to get reacclimated back into, you know, going to work and getting homes and just getting back into civilian life?
Well, first, you know, I really appreciate you discussing this issue on your show, because most people aren't aware that every Black person is a military family member.
Wow.
I myself am a fourth-generation veteran, so I'm a little more unique in that perspective, because my family's been serving continuously since World War I. But if every Black person on this show actually takes a second to pause, if either your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, one of your grandfathers, or, you know, one of your grandmother's brothers, bunch of your uncles or some cousins have served in the military, right? I know so many other folks who have no military or veteran familiation other than themselves. But Black people, no matter who you speak to, they had a, you know, like I said, a mother or dad who fought in Desert Storm, or an uncle or grandparent fought either Vietnam, Korea, or World War II, right? And so this issue is very unique for the Black community. So to the point of the issue that we're talking in the present with respect to military spouses and veterans attempting to find employment, whether from the military spouse perspective, moving from state to state with their active duty spouse, you have to also take into account that Black people are quote unquote overrepresented in the military, right? So even though we make up 10 to 13% of the population, depending on how you look at the census numbers, we make up over 30% of the population in the military.
Wow.
Right? So even though this issue is important for the country as a whole, as Black people, we really do need to be attentive when it comes to veteran military family issues. So to your point on talking about military reciprocity, obviously, as you know, and probably better than I, when it comes to employment numbers, Black people are at the bottom, right? Any negative stat there is out there, whether it's education, access to healthcare, or in this case, employment, Black people are at the bottom of it. So, you know, my job is being with the, you know, advisor, military and veteran advisor with Merit, is bringing all these advocacy groups like the Association of United States Army, Blue Star Families, Women Veterans Interactive, and the National Military Spouse Network, and several others, is both bringing a spotlight, or a bigger spotlight, to the importance of the issues, and then also in this case with Merit, bringing an actual tangible solution that can improve the ability of a military spouse receiving employment when they move from one state to another.
And so, and first and foremost, I'm so happy that you're able to shed a light, Brother Teron, around the fact that, you know, we are overrepresented, because I didn't even know that number. I didn't know that we were, you know, 30% of the military population, which is something. So a lot of the conversation around the military it like hits home. It truly affects Black people in a very significant way. And I will agree with you. My sister has been a part of the military. She was in the Marine Corps. My dad was in the military. He was in the Army in Vietnam. So we're seeing this. And I'm wondering, do you think that where we are right now, and I want to get to the nuts and bolts of this in a moment, but at least do you feel like as much as America has put out there that it stands behind its military, that it stands behind its soldiers and its veterans, how true is that as a military man yourself? Do you really see that? Do you feel that? Do Black soldiers experience that love?
So, look at it from this perspective. I would say that in their hearts, elected officials, in their hearts, they care, right? But as a policy writer, it's very easy to craft policy and to write legislation that solves various problems, right? In this case, military spouse and veteran reciprocity. The beauty of the technology that Merit has available and has offered with respect to partnering with all the states in our country and our U.S. territories is that the Merit's tool provides that tangible solution to the policies that our state level elected officials have crafted.
Mm. Mm. So what does that mean? Does that mean that we should expect more military officials or those who come out of the military system, more veterans to get involved in politics? Like, how did we bridge that?
Wow.
I mean, we hear about the heroes, right? And when I think of military, Black military, I'm thinking of Colin Powell. Now, I have, I have a lot of respect for Colin Powell, even though he might be a Republican. But you can clearly see that he operates from a different set of principles, right? Of things. So, do we need more of Colin Powell's, for lack of a better word, in order for us to help for our men and women in the military to feel like they are seen and heard?
I would say yes. Now, I was listening to your other show, so I would say, you and I had a Scotch and cigar conversation. I'd give you my pal for president in 2000 theory. But I would say, from a holistic perspective, yes. Not just Black veterans, but veterans in total need to get involved in some manner or another in public service. As a former cadet of the United States Military Academy at West Point, part of our oath is service to the nation. In this case, continued service to the nation. And a certain aspect of that is having control, or a certain level of aspect of control over your fate. And if you're not seeing legislation, policies, or those legislation policies that you believe in being properly appropriated, well, instead of sitting on your couch or sitting in your back patio, complaining about it with your friends and your family, you need to act with your feet, act with your hands, and become involved. Whether that means being a part of your civic association, whether that means joining groups like Blue Star Families or AUSA, Women's Veteran Interactive, et cetera, or if that means running for office, right? Because if you don't broadcast the issues you care about, you cannot be upset when your elected officials don't broadcast them for you.
Right, absolutely. So let's talk about these professional licenses, Brother Teron. What does this mean? Like veterans being able to work in various states without the scrutiny or without even the red tape of not being from that state, because we know our veterans move around. That you're based in one place, your family might be in another place. So how big of an issue is this? Talk to us about that.
So there's an average of about 42 days of unemployment that a military spouse faces because they have to first figure out, when they're able to figure out what licenses and certifications they either need to attain or retrain on, because the state they're moving into or have moved into won't accept or doesn't accept the certifications and licenses that they currently hold. And so what our goal is, in a perfect world scenario, which is truly plausible, and I stress that word plausible, is that Merit's tool already will map out what you have with respect to credentials and license to those in the states that you are going to move to, and then translate those so that you don't have to go and recertify for subject areas that you're already qualified to serve.
And so how did it get to this point where there was all this red tape?
Not knowing the internal and long-term business of all 50 states, because as you know, every state is run on itself. We don't live in a federalist society, right? So states
Right.
make their own bureaucracies. So there are some states where the bureaucracy is relatively simple, right? But then you have some states where there's a licensing board for every profession you can think of, right?
Wow.
Right. And so for merit, we've taken it upon ourselves to hold formal conversations and meetings with several governors, their chiefs of staff, their state's secretaries and commissioner of veteran affairs, and their senior staff and subject matter experts to figure out who we need to talk to, and if they need new legislation, assisting them in crafting said legislation, and how to work within the bureaucracy so that we can translate these licenses and these certifications in order for incoming military spouses and those veterans either live in the state or want to move to the state to attain access and find employment.
So this has to be a conversation that both the federal government, but more importantly among the state government, to have with veterans to ensure that the veterans are getting the licenses that they need to gain full employment. Is that the proper way to understand this situation?
Kind of. What I would say is it's one of those issues that because it only affects a small population of people,
right?
It hasn't really been at the forefront of a lot of leaders, and I don't say that in the negative.
I get you.
Right, it's just life and reality, right? And so over the past several years, several states have crafted and passed some form of legislation with respect to military reciprocity. Some of it has been totally blanket, which is great, and then others have looked at professions that they knew that because of their bureaucracy and how robust it is.
Yeah,
they looked at different types of employment, like education, healthcare, truck drivers, for instance, right, which are very easy to translate from either military to civilian, or if you can draw blood as a nurse in one state, you ought to be able to draw blood as a nurse in another state, right? So for us, it's been a matter of having these conversations with the states because everyone is on board, right? Everyone supports this issue. It's now a matter of showing them that, hey, we have a tool that is relatively cheap, that our partners agree is a good quality tool, that can actually breathe life into the legislation that you've already written.
Absolutely. So what would you like for our audience to do? What can we do to support our family, our brothers and sisters in the military, to be able to move around the country, to be able to get the employment, to be able to find homes, like to make life a little bit simpler? I mean, you guys have already put your lives out there for us. And, it's not enough for you to get like a free cup of coffee or some donuts
right.
from the local, there has to, even though you might like that, but there has to be some real substantial,
right.
tangible stuff there, because, I can only imagine, and I haven't served in the military, brother, but my pops have told me that sometimes the burden of the transition can be so great that when you can't get simple things like clothing, can't get food, you can't get the job, you can't get the shelter, it triggers.
Yeah.
It creates a real psychological issue, because now you're trying to reconcile. Well, I put myself out there. I've done what I'm supposed to do for my country, and this is how my country returned the favor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can only imagine that, brother.
Yeah, I can fully attest and appreciate what your dad shared with you. I work with several and have worked with several organizations that do their darnest to make that not a reality, right?
Right.
Sadly, we don't live in a perfect world. The high in the sky answer I can give to that, obviously, is for those. I say everyone needs to be involved in their community from one aspect or another. It can be the PTA, it can be your homeowners association, but I think every veteran, and especially in this case, Black people too, for that matter, right? We all need to put ourselves in a position where we have some level of control over ourselves and our greater society, however we define our society, our community. With respect to the issue of veteran and military reciprocity, there's a couple things you can do. For information, people can go to our website. It's just simple www.merits.com/aspire. Our partner groups, the names of which I mentioned, and that's soon going to grow into even more, I would say, commonly known household names of groups that are out there who have been doing the work and carrying the torch for decades. Get involved with them. Let your voices be heard, because at the end of the day, unless it's a personal agenda, elected officials are only going to do that which they need to do. So whether that's good or bad. And so you, in this case, the viewers, you need to make, if this is an issue you care about, you need to make your elected officials care about this issue too.
Ain't that the truth? Isn't that the truth? Let's take a couple of comments, because folks are checking in, bro, Teron, as we having this conversation about making sure that we support military families, not just those who are active duty military members. Let me see. And also, but the families that these soldiers come from. Real Brooklyn, you checked in and said, as a retiree and is still serving the feds as a federal employee, serving the military with a job skill of combat doesn't get you far in the civilian sector. It's more than being Black. Many folks decide to get out because they couldn't conform to the UCMJ and the military way of life. When this happens, it becomes a struggle to find a job, medical coverage, and housing. And can you speak to that, brother?
He put a lot in that, but I can feel him. Just like your dad shared things with you, my dad shared things with me too. My dad's a retired Marine, Mustang 06, which meant he enlisted and then became an officer later. Being in the Army, as a Black man is easy and hard at the same time, right? So it's easy in the sense that if you just truly believe, and this goes actually blanket for anyone who's in the military, if you truly believe, stand on your principles, stand for value, truth, justice, et cetera, and you don't care about not getting promoted on time, not getting the jobs you technically should have, you're fine, because at the end of the day, you're still going to have the 1st and the 15th, as I refer to it, right? You're always going to get paid. You're never going to get fired for it. But, but at the same time, we're still Black, right? So you still have those issues you have to deal with. And sometimes, you don't have mentors to lean on. Sometimes you're in a unit where you don't have friends to lean on, and sometimes you're blessed and you do. And so I understand the spirit of a Real Brooklyn statement on that. When you get out the military, it can be a little more difficult than it ought to be. Employers, so the biggest crux on this, to speak to this from a business perspective, is that when you talk to leaders in the civilian business world, they talk about all the intangibles of what it means to hire a veteran, right? Duty focused, great time management skills, leadership, team building, all that stuff, right? All that great stuff that you want in a leader. Right. But then when you go to apply to it for a job, you can't get past the HR firewall because the HR people don't know how to properly translate your roles and responsibilities to the job. So unless you have the inside track to the position where the senior leaders who are making the decisions, it is very hard to translate your resume to read leader and problem solver to get a position. And this is why, it's a Black show, so just be honest, this is why Black folks got to take care of themselves. This is why Black folks, if you're in a position of hiring authority and you have a friend out there who's a veteran, pick up the phone. Don't assume they're good, because your veteran friend's not going to complain to you about how hard life is or how much his job sucks or her job sucks, right? Those veterans, Right. Just like, other folks look out for themselves. Everyone knows that we see a job posted on LinkedIn or Indeed or whatever. They already have someone they want for that position 9 times out of 10. Right. They're putting out there because they have to. So you've got to look out for those people, because at the end of the day, it's the intangibles you want.
That's right.
I'm a combat veteran myself too. I'm field artillery. I was light cavalry. My tangible skills don't apply to anything, right? But you're not hiring me to friggin' fire rounds down range, right? You're not hiring me to meet with and destroy the enemy. You're hiring me to solve problems, to build teams, to build organizations, to lead people towards success. And so as employers, if there are any business leaders on here, whether you own a mom and pop or a Fortune 100 company, you're hiring veterans for their leadership. Yep. So you need to have an arm in your HR department that knows how to read veteran resumes. Because
that's a great point, brother.
Right. You can only civilianize a military resume so much.
Right. That's a great point. Man, that just hits home for me. It resonates with me, Brother Teron, because one of the things that I can only, if you're looking at somebody and they say, oh yeah, I've had this time in combat, or I've led this battalion, or I led this group of men and women, or I've done this, and then you're looking at the job, they like, you're almost overqualified. It almost puts you in a space where, people just, like you said, people don't know how to use you, how to bring you on into a team, because you have so many skills. And I mean, of course, being a part of the armed services, you're exposed to so many opportunities to grow personally and professionally, that at the same time, like you get into the business world, into quote unquote civilian life, I can only imagine. And I mean, oh my gosh, I can only imagine. And you're right. And I think that's something that maybe we need to start advocating for, that within every HR department, especially for some of your larger companies, you should have someone there that understands how to break down the veteran's resume and translate it into a civilian resume.
Correct.
And we know that happens. And you said it best, brother. It happens for white folks. Because white people, and I'm saying this because white people understand the correlation between business and warfare. I mean, let's keep it real. They understand it. So if they see a military man or a military woman sitting in front of them, you doggone right we're going to bring them in, because they understand the difference. They know that they know in business is warfare. But for Black folks, we have to justify. We have to go through extra steps, and we have to be loud, and we have to present ourselves differently. And so I think that's absolutely right, brother. I think that's absolutely right. We got a couple of moments left, Brother Teron. What are some of the resources? I know that you do your work through Merit. So how can people get more information, and how can we help in pushing this process and this issue forward?
Well, yeah, so definitely, go to our website, www.merits.com/aspire, ASPIRE. And if you go there, if you have questions, info, want to get access to either the company or any of our partner organizations, you can, there's a simple means of typing that in there, and we'll definitely connect you in earnest. The other thing too, like I said before, I think people just need to be involved. They need to involve themselves through action and not just watching. We can't be spectators. We can't allow ourselves to be spectators. Without putting my personal business out there, I'm working with Merit because they are providing me a means of serving both my country and this population of people who have been a strong reason as to who and why and what I am. In this case, veterans and military families. So we have to, Black people, we're the most resilient people in this country, if not the world, right? We know how to create greatness out of what people seem to feel is nothing. So,
right. That's facts.
So in that case, you know, for the people who are upset, you know, be upset, but put some action to it.
Absolutely.
You know, like I said, join a group, run for office, you know, be your congressman or city councilman's most nuisance citizen, right?
Right.
Attend city council, county board meetings on the regular, write to the editor, something. You know, because with respect to the work I'm doing, I'm fortunate that we do have the support of both Democrat and Republican state governments. You know, I'm fortunate that, you know, both the VA and DOD are diligently working in this space, and then we have nonprofit and for-profit organizations that believe in this. But that doesn't mean we don't need help, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you can't still pick up the phone or write a letter to an elected official and say, why is it taking so long? It's
Absolutely.
a simple problem. People need to work.
Very, very, I love it. You can't say it any better. We got about 30 seconds, Brother Teron, but what's your take on Secretary Austin, first Black man to serve as the United States Secretary of Defense? How do you think he's holding up in that very, very mighty post that he's in?
Too bad you don't really know me. I'll say this. Secretary Austin, his friends and mentors are friends and mentors of mine as well, especially heavy.
Wow.
I think he's doing, with respect to the position he's in and understanding the history behind being the first Black man or Black person in a role such as this, he's doing a great job. And it's important for us, no matter how frustrated we may seem to feel with how our country's going or what our national security strategy is or what DOD looks like or our military looks like, we need to support him because his support or our support of him is going to make him better and make him more resolved and enable him to do even more than he already wants to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great answer. Great answer. Brother Teron Sims, thank you so much for your time with us this afternoon. We truly, truly appreciate it as you serve as military and veteran advisor at Merits. We truly, truly thank you for advocating and doing the work that is so necessary for, unfortunately, a part of our population, a part of our community that is not talked about enough, which is our military veterans and their families. So thank you, Brother Teron, for the work that you do, brother. We truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, brother. Take care.
Absolutely. Folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you for your support. Make sure y'all go to blackstarnetwork.com to continue to show your support for us. Download the app for free. Check us out on all of our platforms, Black Star Network. There you can find the information about how you can financially support us, how you can share the word about the work that we're doing, how the awesome programs that we have streaming right now, and additional information, additional footage, and so many other pieces like Rolling with Roland and so many other things that is major events are happening across the country. They are streamed right now on Black Star Network. So make sure y'all do your due diligence and support blackstarnetwork.com today. Also, make sure you follow me on my social media platform. You can find me at The Real Farajii on Instagram, Farajii Muhammad on Facebook, and Farajii on Twitter. I'd love to connect with you. Let's continue to build this great community called The Culture and The Culture Crew. So I thank you for sharing my tweets. Jawan, I see you all the time, so thank you for that. Lana, thank you so much. Damon, thank you so much. I just want to connect with all of you because the more we get to know each other a little bit better, the stronger our community will be. And this is a community, folks, that I truly, truly appreciate and being a part of. So thank you for your support for all that I do here on this network. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned. Up next is Roland Martin Unfiltered at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure y'all tune into the big brother and hear what he got to say and all the dynamic panelists that he has coming on as he talks about these issues. And as always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.